Alright, so there wasn't exactly an intro to this, but just to give it a small one, this is part 2 for of me talking about the things we could see on Pokemon Day. At the end, I'll have some updated thoughts recorded around the time as this intro. But yeah, this is just an extension of the video that was released on Wednesday, I believe, or Thursday. It was one of the two. Enjoy. Assuming I'm way off and we get Unova in some way. Like I said, I don't exactly care what they do with the game. I like the originals for a reason. So if I get a Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl type remake, I don't care. And if they change stuff, I want to see what they change and how they add to the game. So, like I said, I went either way. But the way I would see it, I think that it's probably... With Gold and Silver, I couldn't really say for certain. With Black and White, I feel like if there is going to be a Legends game, unless they just do a Legends game, a Black and White remake would have to be like a Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl level remake, but it includes Black and White and Black and White 2. Because that's the full story of Unova's, as of right now. So, if you're going to do anything with its story for any reason, like a Legends, let's say Kyurem, or some people are claiming there could be a Black and White 3, either way, people haven't played those. Like, those are like the... I don't like bringing up sales numbers, because they don't exactly mean much, but they are, in fact, the worst-selling Pokemon generation. And given the fact that you truly get those games when you actually know the lore and shit, it's kind of important that people know. So that re-releasing those is pretty much mandatory. And again, it also has the secondary effect of crippling that absurd secondhand market, where they drive up the prices. Scalpers, that's where they destroy them, because they like what? There's no reason that should cost that much. Now, again, like I said earlier, I prefer 3D, so I would want that to be in 3D. And basically in the vein of Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl. For all intents and purposes, it was marketed as Diamond and Pearl, but in 3D with better graphics. That's what I got. And I do like the way that the game looks. I'm like, in their attempt to keep the 3D models in the same general like style as the sprites, I think it came out a little weird. I think the sprites were helped in the fact that it was, you know, a bunch of tiles that were compact on a small screen. So, compared to like a 3D model on an HD TV, if you're playing it on that, and also the way they chose to model it was a little weird. Like, the characters are a little bit too skinny to be like exact one-to-one creation of the Diamond and Pearl sprites. I think it's just weird that I can see his and Lucas's massive head and still see the floor under him, is what I'm saying. So, I can understand I don't agree with it, but I can understand the reservations with Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl's art style. The thing is, right, with Black and White, I'm almost entirely certain it would basically just be a more like a closer to X and Y and Let's Go than anything, because that is essentially what X and Y was, if I remember correctly, was Gen 5 sprite style, but replicated in 3D form. And Let's Go is basically just X and Y. I can say I prefer that the more realistic style they've had in Sun and Moon and from 8 onwards. But, you know, I don't exactly care. So yeah, Black and White, getting back into the game for a moment, you know, Fairy type, that has to be there. Yeah, Fairy type has to be there. Every single trait evolution for a Pokemon that's present like new evolutions for a Pokemon that's present has to be there. That's like the only real thing I have an issue with in Let's Go, is that none of the pre-evos and post-evos for Pokemon that are in Kanto are in that game. That's another thing that I should have put that in Gold Silver section. That should be there. So as long as they do that, we're good. Yeah. Any evolutions for Pokemon in the Unova Dex should be there. So like and also forms for those Pokemon. So you should have a way to get Hisuian and Samurott. I don't know why they keep doing this. Give them like an item or something. Past that, what I'm mainly thinking about is what they would do if they were going to include Black and White 2. Would it just be 2 separate games shoved onto one cartridge and then you choose which one you play at the start? If that's the case, then it could read 2 different save files, which means they could do stuff like having your character from Black and White 1 be somewhere in the world and you can fight them in the Black and White 2 save file. Like, I think that would be a good idea, actually. Because if I remember correctly, the protagonists from Black and White 1 were originally supposed to be fights in Black and White 2, but that just never happened. This way, they can do that. Because all the Pokemon are, like, both stories are in one game, 2 separate saves, and I'm pretty sure they can find some way to have those 2 separate saves show up as 2 separate saves in Pokemon Home. So, I don't know how the back end for that one works, but I feel like it's something they should be able to do. Again, I don't know much about that, so I might just be wrong entirely. But having stuff like that, and also having like the memory link, because that could work like that if they do it like that. That would all be awesome. Now, what would I add? Not much, really. If they're doing a Legends, the only thing that I can... Oh, another thing I should have put in the Johto section, but this works here. Another thing that I want is that if there's a Pokemon that gets put into a Legends game, assuming that we get normal remakes and Legends games for both. If they do something in a Legends game, I want whatever that new form or new Pokemon, I want that to be able to be transferred into the remakes. That's something Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl did not do, and that is also an L. I feel like you should have been able to do that. So, now that we've gotten the Black and White remake talk out of the way, because there isn't really much to say about the environments. Obviously, remake them in 3D. Now, they could be Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl style, or they could be like attempting to form fit the original regions into like a Scarlet Violet type style. They could do that. I might do a separate video talking about that specifically, because this recording session is running a little long. I don't know if I'm going to split it into 2. But yeah, so moving on to a Legends game, let's say Legends Kyurem. I have one request for that, and that is to see the original dragon, which is most likely what that would be. But I still feel like it's important to say that that would be my expectation for that if I had to have any. We got so close in Black and White 2, right? They've laid out the legend for us in 1 where they were 2 dragons, where Reshiram and Zekrom were 2 dragons that were split into that were originally 1 dragon that split into 2 dragons. And then we found out Kyurem is what was left of that original dragon after they split. We got to fuse one of them with Kyurem. So now, the question is, what would it take to get the original dragon back, and what would it look like? And I feel like those 2 things are probably going to be the most important thing about a Legends Kyurem, or like I mentioned earlier, someone's a Black and White 3 that could also work. Story-wise and setting-wise, it really depends on which one of these would happen. Black and White 3 or a Legends Kyurem. Ironically, I would say both of them should be Black and White 3, and have one be more Legend style and one be a more futuristic thing, like a Black and White 3. They could both play the same, like the Legend style, but take place in wildly different settings. But then again, that doesn't exactly seem like the type of thing that they would normally do. Again, they could change anything, but we have a pattern, and we should stay with it to keep your expectations in check until it's proven they'll change it, which it has not been proven yet. So for Legends Kyurem, I think the Unova we could see, because America 200 years ago, like the 1800s, if I remember correctly, I think at that point, a lot of the stuff that we had now was in its infancy. Like, hold on, I believe there was electricity at that point. All right, let's see. Yeah, so telephones, yeah, electricity, photography, typewriters. So, yeah. So, yeah, so there's still a lot of like old-fashioned type stuff, like horse-drawn carriages and stuff, but we're seeing a lot of we see a lot of what we know of as common now start to show up, like electricity and typewriters, which eventually will become like, I guess they were part of what became computers and stuff, because, you know, keyboard. But so like having 19 or 1800s America, if they decide to do that with Legends, would be pretty cool, because we are seeing, like, if I look on Google Images, right, we're seeing like factories starting to come up. We're seeing more modern-ish buildings. We're seeing we're also seeing expansion out west, but I don't know how that would work out for a Legends Kyurem if they decide to keep it strictly in Unova. I guess, see, using logic, that probably was part of the reason why New York became so big. People would show up at New York and then eventually would try to move their way west, because, you know, gold rush and everything. But, oh yeah, that, we're just gonna leave that one out, that event right there. But yeah, no, a lot of stuff that we would see currently is starting to come up around the 1800s. So I think it'd be really interesting to see kind of like a mix between the type of style that Hisui was in, where it's like more traditional, like old stuff. Like, and let's see, in America that would be stuff like wood houses and shit, and then contrast that, like how they did how they did it in Legends Arceus, except more of it. So you'd have like tents and stuff from. When I say tents, there's an actual word for it. For like the more indigenous people. And you'd have like wood houses for, you know, wood houses and stuff, like tents for people traveling, and wood houses for people who live in like an actual settlement. And then some places would have like brick buildings and factories that billow smoke, because we're a cancer on this planet. You know, I think it'd be good to see that contrast, because I think it also does work out well with I think it does work out well with the themes of Black and White, especially given the contrast of Black City and White Tree Hollow. So I think that would be a pretty good thing for them to do. Now, Black and White 3, I think that would be like that, like the theoretical Legends Kyurem that I just mentioned, but in reverse. Like, it's a lot more futuristic, but there's small hints of natural, like old stuff, like classical stuff. And either way, the message would be that neither are bad if you keep a good balance of them. Like, you can have both just so long as you keep a good balance of the two. I don't exactly know what to say about that. I'm going to need to think on that more. But I do think that it could work well in reverse of the theoretical Legends Kyurem idea. I do feel like the Swords of Justice need to have a point, like need to have some sort of significance in a Legends Kyurem. Same with the genies. I think all of the mythicals or like just the other legendaries for the Unova region should have some type of story significance. A little bit more than the legendaries and Sinnoh had in Legends Arceus. I did like the way that they included them by making most of them be part of the base game and not even just being extra, but like you have to fight Regigigas and Cresselia and Heatran for the main story of the game. Well, the post game, but it is essentially the main story. I consider everything before fighting Arceus the main story, because you know the game has his name on it. Yeah. I would like to see them like that, but maybe more of a story inclusion that is throughout the entire game instead of just at the end. I think that'd be real interesting. Kind of like the Legendary Beasts, because you see the Legendary Beast in the main story of Gold, Silver, Crystal, Heart Gold, Soul Silver. And you can fight them and capture them. Before you reach the first set of credits, I'm pretty sure. But I want them to not only be part of the main game before the credits, but have story significance, like the legendaries and Legends Arceus did. Except more of that, you know, like I don't know. Maybe they could be the reason that. I'm not entirely sure how that would go. Again, I have to think on this a little bit more. So there could be a part 2 before Pokemon Day happens. It just depends on how I part this. If I part this and have them come out back-to-back weeks, I think I should be able to make it work before Pokemon Day. Hold on. So I'm recording this here. If I post it... okay, so I'm gonna have to look at my schedule. But yeah. Alright. So I'm gonna have to think about this a little bit more. So yeah. See ya. Oh yeah, and since I don't have a good place to put this, depending on which region-based game gets announced, we'll most likely start streaming either Heart Gold or Pokemon White and White 2. So yeah, that's another thing I gotta add here. I don't know where I'll put this. This is being recorded like the day before I finish the video. So yeah. Hello. So I'm back. Like I said, I would hit the end of the last part, and the beginning of this part if I recorded that already. And so I'm here to give my updated thoughts because these are about a month old-ish. And also I wanted to give a conclusion for something I was talking about in the original recording, since I just listened to it to make sure I got everything, to make sure that I'm staying on track and I don't say anything that contradicts the last recording, unless specifically that was the point. I was thinking, because at some point toward the latter half of that, I talk about the Swords of Justice having a story role in a hypothetical Legends game or Black and White 3. Mainly the Legends game, though. And I noticed that I started a thought and then cut it off and said I needed to think about it. That thought was, what if they were like the Swords of Justice, like Cobalion, Virizion, Terrakion, and maybe Keldeo were the reason, or at least part of the reason, why Kyurem splits in the first place. Like, we know that it was because of the two kings of Unova, but maybe, let's say, they started it and then something involving the Swords of Justice was the straw that broke the camel's back, essentially. Or maybe it could be the other way around, and that something, like a conflict within that original dragon, starts with them, and then all hell breaks loose when those two start fighting. It could be something like that. I'm just trying to think about how we could have the other legendaries be a part of the game. So yeah, that's what I wanted to add to that. And also, just to clarify another point, when I said that I mentioned 2 different versions of something, one of my thoughts was, if they really wanted to go real extra, the ideas for a Black and White 3 and a Legends Kyurem could both be a Black and White 3, where they take the original version differences. It's essentially taking the original version differences from Black and White 2 and pushing them far into the extreme. So Black and White and Black and White 2 had classic and futuristic versions of Opelucid City. They had one of them had a whole town on one part of the map, and in that same part of the map, in the other version, there was a lush forest with all these different Pokemon you couldn't find anywhere else in the game. I think it would be really interesting for them to basically push those to those absolute extremes, and have like Pokemon White 3 be something more like a Legends Unova or like a Legends Kyurem, where you go backwards in time to the point where the region is the most pristine. Now that it could be with people in it, and you see all these old events happening, and then Black 3 is like the sequel that happens in a futuristic version of the entire region, where there's like a massive cities, massive constructs built by people. So that was what I was talking about earlier on in that session as well. I just wanted to clear that up in case there was any confusion. Now we're on to the reason why this epilogue, let's say, for this video even really exists. So on Tuesday of this week, which was, I think at this point 2 days ago, it is Thursday, yeah, they announced their Pokemon Presents for Pokemon Day, which, you know, we knew that was going to happen. The thing is, right, we have two pieces of information. One of them is just the announcement itself. They announced it a week early, which they basically never do now. And the second thing is that apparently it's going to be 25 minutes long. No, I might be wrong. In fact, let me look it up really, really quick, because I want to make sure that I have this correctly. But if I'm not mistaken, the last time it was something that long was in 2021's Pokemon Presents, which was the one where they announced Legends Arceus and Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl at the same time. That's not the right one. There it is. Okay, so the other one that was that long was 2023's, but 2023's had the Scarlet and Violet DLC. I don't believe the one in 2020 was that long. Yeah, it wasn't. I don't think. Let's see. Yeah, it wasn't. So, the point is, with this, right, is it's 25 minutes. It's a beefy one. And so, we're gonna get something here, right? Like, even if we ignore the fact that the 2021 one was that long, right? And then solely focus on the last one we got which was last year's. That was because they were announcing a bunch of new shows and everything. So something's being announced here. And on top of that, they also announced it a week early, which is something they usually don't do. A lot of the time, they'll announce the presents a day before. So in this case, it would be Monday the 26th, I believe. Yeah. Instead, they chose to announce it 7 days beforehand. And I want to say that they're doing it on purpose because there's something huge happening. Because we've seen what happens when they let hype build up like this without a payoff. And as much as I really think it is just your fault for gaslighting yourself into thinking it, I can't. Because... what? I can't partially. Because them announcing it a whole week in advance was just the perfect catalyst for that to happen. I believe it was a 2020 Pokemon Direct. Alright, yeah, Presents Direct. I think this was before they started using Presents. Maybe, I'm not sure. Where they announced the Sword and Shield DLC, and then the week after they teased something for the week after. That was huge. That was a new type of Pokemon game, a new game style that they hadn't done before. But announcing it a week earlier was just a mistake, period. So them doing it again is either a repeat of that mistake, or they're doing some sheer bullshit like they did in 2021. Those are the only two outcomes. But yeah, hopefully I can find a way to edit this down. If I can't, then this is just going to be another like 9 minutes added on to the end of the video. So now, for real this time, I'm gonna see y'all on Pokemon Day. I might do a stream for it, maybe, but just know that if I don't see you for that, I'll definitely be making a video about it that'll come out either later that day or early Wednesday. So yeah, now for real. See ya.